Hey guys, welcome back to the Current Crisis Show. I'm so excited that you guys are here today. Before we jump into our headline news, please rate and review, follow if you're on Instagram or YouTube, please subscribe. And yeah, also go over to Spotify because the numbers really matter there. So the big topics we're going to be talking about today is the Gen Z stare and Sydney Sweeney's controversy. What's going on? Why is this important? And what matters? First off, we're going to be talking about the Gen Z stare. I'm 17, I'm Gen Z, and I thought, what better way to talk about this? Because I've seen a lot of millennial and Gen X and boomers talking about this, but I felt like we needed to talk about it from Gen Z perspective. What is the Gen Z stare? Well, the Gen Z stare is basically a blank, emptyless expression, a stare that Gen Z will pull out in the workplace, and usually the emotions behind it can be dullness, boredom, judgment, superiority, lack of communication skills, or just pure annoyance. So what does the Gen Z stare look like? Well, I'll show you my Gen Z stare. It's kind of bored, kind of dull, and what is it? Well, here's some creators kind of mocking this and also their take on Gen Z stare experiences and all of that stuff.
There's a new phenomenon that's taking over. It's called the Gen Z stare. Now, it looks like this. It's basically a blank stare with dead eyes and complete silence, often used in customer service jobs, or it could be a response to a parent asking something really annoying like, how's your room cleaning up going?
So quite interesting takes on what they're talking about and why is it important. But I think the biggest people that are interacting with the Gen Z stare and kind of hating on it is millennials. Millennials are using the phrase Gen Z stare to describe vacant non-responses when interacting with young workers or young people in general. Some Gen Zers have pushed back saying that they stare down customers who ask illogical questions. The Gen Z stare is the latest example of this generation's workplace actions going under the microscope. So why is the Gen Z stare happening? Why is it going viral? What's going on with the Gen Z stare and what does it mean? Well, to be honest, I think the Gen Z stare is a teenage angsty way of just feeling pure annoyance or just kind of bored. I mean, we can pull it out in a lot of different scenarios or situations where we don't understand, when we're annoyed, when we're angry. I mean, it's just kind of a stare that we do. I think people are reading too much into it. But I do think it also has to do with the fact that a lot of generations are hating on Gen Z, right? We had to go through COVID-19 where everything was pushed on social media. We had no interaction with human beings. We were quarantined from our friends, from our family, from teachers and schoolmates. And it was really hard, right? Because we had everything on social media. We were also the first generation and almost the experimental generation to be raised purely on social media and screens, which also has a play in the fact that we lack interaction skills and we lack communication skills and we maybe don't respect our elders enough, or we maybe don't want to communicate back, and it's easier just to do a stare so people can kind of understand what we're saying without saying it. And I think that truly is a reason why. I know a lot of the times, a lot of teenagers don't agree with people or are rude to people, and that's kind of why they pull out the Gen Z stare. But I'm also going to let you see what other Gen Zers feel like is appropriate for the Gen Z stare and why they do it.
Have the Gen Z stare because most of y'all are just clueless. Can I have a cheeseburger with no cheese? Some customers make you question, how are these real people? It says remove my card. Do I remove my card? Most of the time, it's us trying to figure out if you're being for real or not. This item says that it's out of stock. Do you have any more in the back? But then somehow, we're the mean ones.
So we see why Gen Z is kind of doing this. It is a lot in the workplace, but it can also be just talking to people one-on-one and just pulling this out because it can range from a lot of different reasons why we pull out the Gen Z stare. But an article from The Guardian says, have you been a victim of the Gen Z stare? It's nothing on the Gen X look of dread. So this article starts by saying, have you been a victim of the Gen Z stare? Maybe you have, but you didn't realize it because you didn't know it existed. So let me explain it to you. The Gen Z stare, now aged between 13 and 28, have apparently adopted this widely deplored stare. a blank, emptyless, and unnerving expression. The stare can often be deployed in customer service contexts, and many emotions can be read into it, including boredom, indifference, superiority, judgment, or sheer silliness. According to Forbes, whose writer described his unease in Starbucks when faced with a flat, zombie-like look that was difficult to read from a Starbucks employee. Well, that is what's going on, the Gen Z stare. It can be a lack of communication skills, but kind of like this article says, it can have a lot of different emotions read into it, boredom, indifference. And I think it does have a lot to do with those kind of emotions and things that Gen Z feel. I mean, remember, we're teenagers, okay? We were raised, again, for 3 solid years during COVID-19 when we couldn't interact with people, when everything was on social media, when we didn't have interaction skills, when we weren't going out to places and talking to people and talking to our friends and our family outside of being on our phone and calling them, and we kind of got scared of society and going back out into society, and it was hard to talk to people and it was hard to start conversations because people would rather be left alone. And this is the world that we're living in, and this is why we have the Gen Z stare, because we're done with life. We were raised on social media. It's kind of annoying to have people ask you questions sometimes, or you're just blank and you're expressionless and you have a stare. And it can also be RBF. What is RBF? Well, it's when you have a face, you know, you don't even realize it, and you're just staring off into space, because I do have RBF sometimes, and it's just you don't even realize that you're doing it, and sometimes you do it. And that's a lot of context to the Gen Z stare. I'll throw up some other articles, and the Gen Z stare is what it is because that's kind of what we're going through. And every generation has had their form of the Gen Z stare. This isn't new, this isn't crazy, this isn't something that, what is going on with Gen Z? I think a lot of other generations do put Gen Z down. They say that we are doomed because of Gen Z, that we are the generation to screw it all up. But I'm sorry, the world's issues are not a fault of Gen Z. In fact, Gen Z is a fault of the world's issues. We have gone through a lot being teenagers, almost World War III, things going on, prices rising, and it often feels hard just to be a teenager trying to live your life when you have the left and the right tugging you and all sorts of stuff. So when we're working and when we're tired and when we're bored and when social media often feels like it's taking over our life, we might pull out the stare. Anyway, let's talk about the controversies with Sydney Sweeney. So first off, who is Sydney Sweeney? I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard of her. She is a famous American actress known for her roles in Euphoria, Handmaid's Tale, and several other roles. She has been in a lot of controversies, including the bathwater incident. So what is the bathwater incident? Well, Sydney Sweeney was selling a limited time edition of men's soap called Bathwater Bliss in collaboration with Dr. Squash, which includes a touch of her actual bathwater. Yep, you heard that right. Sydney Sweeney filmed an ad, which I'm not going to pop up because it was very sexual and gross, and it actually included bathwater in the soap, and men were buying this. I mean, if that's not a controversy, I don't know what is. I don't think she ever kind of came out with a full statement of that or the backlash that she was receiving for that. But personally, I think that this was a interesting marketing move on Sydney Sweeney's part and on Dr. Squash's part. This is not the first time that Sydney Sweeney has sexualized herself, but kind of putting the touch of actual bathwater is just gross, and I don't know why anyone would sell that, let alone buy it. But here we are today in this crazed world. But what is going on with Sydney Sweeney again? Why is she in headline news again? Well, Sydney Sweeney's recent American Eagle advertising campaign featuring the tagline, "Sydney Sweeney has great genes," has sparked a significant online backlash. Which, appearing to be a simple play on words, critics have argued that the campaign's visuals and language, which emphasize Sydney's blonde hair and blue eyes, invoke a problematic association with eugenics and outdated beauty ideals rooted in white supremacy. So what is this ad? Why did it get so big, and what's so wrong with it? I'm going to pop up what it is right here.
Often determining traits like hair color, personality, and even eye color. My genes are blue.
So as you can see, American Eagle obviously advertised the fact that she has blue eyes and blue jeans on, and she has good genes. Nobody's saying that Sydney Sweeney does not have good genes. She's very beautiful. And the fact that she is blonde hair and blue eyes. They just kind of played around with that fact. I don't think it was rooted in anything with eugenics and white supremacy. I believe it was purely a play on words. I don't know why Sydney Sweeney is involved in this controversy. I don't know why it's controversial at all. It might be a little sexual, the ad, I'm not gonna lie, but this is kind of Sydney Sweeney style. She is a little bit sexual, but I don't think the play on words was anything to be malicious or harmful. I think that's purely just what people are reading into this. A lot of people have kind of read the ad and read into this saying that Sydney Sweeney only does things for the male gaze and sexualization, which, like I said, I do think the bathwater incident is very weird, and she definitely sexualized herself in that, but I don't think this is purely sexual. I think Sydney Sweeney is a beautiful girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, and they simply did a play on words with her wearing their blue jeans and her having good jeans, so I don't know why this is a big controversy or why this is a controversy at all, but that is what's going on, and that is why Sydney Sweeney is yet again in headline news. But that is our big headliners. I am going to end with Bright Spot. So what is this week's Bright Spot? Well, President Trump has just announced a new tariff with Europe, a 15% baseline on most European goods entering the U.S., including autos, pharmaceutical, and semiconductors will face a uniform 50% tariff, down from the previously threatened 30%. This is massive. It's going to help America. It's going to help Europe. There's a $750 billion in energy purchases by 2028, and that's from Europe, and there's also a $600 billion in UA private sector investments in the US by 2028, which is incredible, and it's great what Donald Trump is doing. This has also avoided trade war. The deal was clinging in Scotland at Trump's Turnberry estate just before tariffs were set to spike on August 1. It was averted what could have actually been a costly transatlantic trade conflict. So that was great. That was great that Trump was able to secure the deal, that we were able to have good communication with Europe and between America. Like I said, I don't agree with everything that Donald Trump has done, but he's getting stuff done. So I thought that was a great bright spot. But if you guys enjoyed this segment talking about the Gen Z stare and Sydney Sweeney, please rate and review and follow. Like I said, subscribe on YouTube and Instagram. Please follow my personal Instagram at soliamechling. And I hope you guys really liked it. Let this be a reminder that sometimes teens are fed up, we're angsty, we've had a lot thrown at us, generations are mad at us for almost seemingly no reason, and we might have a lack of communication skills, and we might pull out the Gen Z stare, but it's just what we're doing, it's just what we're dealing with. We're all young adults trying to figure this out. And Sydney Sweeney should not be in really any controversy for her American Eagle ad having jeans on and having good jeans. I don't think it was rooted in any racism or anything like that, but I think her bathwater incident is a little interesting, so that's all I have to say for this one. If you guys agreed or disagree with me, please comment down below.